So maybe you understand basic jazz harmony, and so learning jazz standards such as Autumn Leaves or Blue Bossa or It Could Happen to You, among many others, isn't quite so difficult for you. You're able to pick those up easily, memorize them, learn them, but then all of a sudden you get to weird tunes like FeeFi FoFum or Dolphin Dance and Wayne Shorter tunes, Joe Henderson tunes, John Coltrane tunes, and then you're completely lost. You can't really learn them very well because you don't really understand them. Well, listen, that's what I'm going to talk about today. How do you learn and how do you memorize difficult jazz standards? That's coming right up.
Welcome to the LJS podcast, where you get weekly jazz tips, interviews, stories, and advice for becoming a better jazz musician. And now your host. He's a jazz musician, author, and entrepreneur, Brent Bartstra.
Hey, what's up, everybody? My name is Brent. I am the jazz musician behind the website LearnJazzStandards.com, which is a blog, a podcast, and videos, all geared towards helping you become a better jazz musician. Hey, welcome back to all of you regular listeners. You make this podcast continue every single week. And for those of you who are new, I'm really excited you're here. Listen, I always do my very best to pack as much value into these podcast episodes as I possibly can. So I'm really excited. And on today's show, like I said in the intro, I'm going to be talking about how to learn difficult jazz standards, because maybe if you have those beginning stages, those foundational elements of understanding what 2-5-1 chord progressions are and, basic jazz harmony, those are in place. But then what happens when you get to these weird harmonically complex tunes? Like, how do we process those? How do we think about them? And ultimately, how do we memorize them, right? Because those are much harder to memorize than ones that are very formulaic. We're going to go over that today, and I'm going to be pulling out my trusty buddy, my guitar, to do a little demonstration here in 1 second. Man, should I name my guitar? Sometimes I think about that. Like, other people have named their instruments, but I can never think of a good name. So I guess whatever. If you have any ideas, let me know. I don't know. Just throwing that out into the universe. So it's around this time in New York City here where the weather is starting to get a little colder, which is really nice because it's been really hot and humid and horrible. And I'm starting to see the fall coming in, and I'm getting super excited because the fall is like my favorite season, which means also I'm starting to think about things for the future for Learn Jazz Standards. And specifically, I'm thinking about next year. Now, you might be thinking, wow, man, you're thinking about next year already? I'm like, yeah, because, I'm thinking about the next book I'm going to come out with, or the next course I'm going to come out with. These are things that you have to start thinking about now as someone who does what I do, because, once you dedicate yourself to making one of these things, I mean, it's at least 5 or 6 months of like excruciatingly tough work. I mean, like, if you like, every single one of my ebooks or courses is like my child, right? Like, it's like I like nurtured it, I like raised it up. I mean, there's a lot of pain involved. So like, anyways, I'm thinking about these things right now, and I'm thinking about my ebook that came out this year, the Jazz Standards Playbook and Companion Course, which a lot of people have been really digging and really loving. And kind of a little bit where the inspiration for this episode comes in is like, yeah, in that ebook, we covered a lot of basic jazz harmony. We ventured in some complex stuff too. But, what about those songs that are really difficult? So I'm starting to think maybe a good idea would be the Jazz Standards Playbook Volume 2. I don't know. I'm not sold on the idea. Me and my team, when we like go to validate products, there's a lot of steps and processes we go to make sure it's, something that's going to serve you guys and that's going to be helpful. And by the way, if you have the Jazz Standards Playbook and Companion Course, let me know. Send me an email. Be like, yeah, Brent, I want that, or I don't want that, or, let me know. And hey, if you don't have the Jazz Standards Playbook, hey, make sure you get that, because a lot of people are getting big value out of that. That's at the jazzstandardsplaybook.com if you want to check that out. So that's the inspiration for today's episode. I'm going to stop blabbing on. Let's jump right into this thing. All right, so let's talk about a difficult song. And the one I'm going to choose today to demonstrate is FeeFi FoFum by Wayne Shorter. Now, if you aren't familiar with FeeFi FoFum, what I'd like you to do is maybe even pause this podcast episode if you're in the position to do so, and go look it up on YouTube or Spotify or wherever you like to listen to, or even buy it. That would be a better idea. It's off the album Speak No Evil, which is an excellent album, and it's a classic Wayne Shorter album. So it's FeeFi FoFum. Really great song. I personally love to play it. It's incredibly hard to solo over. It's really harmonically complex. I certainly have not mastered it, but I enjoy it. So let's talk about this tune because it's very difficult. Now, I'm also going to have a chord chart available for you to follow along at the show notes today. Again, if you're able to do that, if you're not driving or if you're not working out the gym right now, that's going to be at learnjazzstandards.com/episode 135. Okay, if you want to check that out as well to follow along with me. But FeeFi FoFum, harmonically complex. So we need to figure out how to think about this. So there's an A section and a B section. So let me first just play the A section for you. All right, so that's the A section right there. Now, if you look at the chord chart, you may or not be completely confused. Now, we are going to go over the bridge in just a second, and the bridge is really important for defining how to start thinking about this song. But just to give you a little sneak preview here, the bridge starts on a B-flat 7 chord, and then it goes to a 4 chord, and it goes back to the 1 chord again. Okay, I just gave it away, the 1 chord. So really the best way to think about this song, and I'm almost 100% sure this is where Wayne Shorter was coming from, the tune is in the key of concert B-flat major, essentially, or a B-flat blues sort of a deal there. So just keep that in the back of your head. So let's start from square one here. Let's start at the beginning of this form, okay? So the beginning of this tune goes like this. And the first chord is an E-flat 7 sharp 11. The sharp 11 is in the melody, right? And then it goes down a half step to a D7 sharp 9. So, okay. And then it goes to a G minor 7, and there's an 11 in the melody. So it's really a G minor 11. So, okay, so what do we have there? Let's just stop right there. Let's not go any further. We're starting with an E-flat 7, essentially. Let's forget about the extensions and alterations in there. Okay, whoops. Down to a D7. So E-flat 7, D7, G minor 7. Okay, what's going on there? Let's figure that out. I think the best way to think about this is you essentially have a 2-5-1 into G minor, the key of concert G minor. Except for this E-flat 7 here is a tritone substitution for the 2 chord. What's the 2 chord in G minor? It's A minor 7. And if you're thinking right now, hey, Brent, well, I don't even know what tritone substitution is, that is going to be good to go back to episode 92. So learnjazzstandards.com/episode 92. Go back to that episode where I talk about tritone substitution. But the basics of tritone substitution is you're substituting one dominant 7th chord for another dominant 7th chord a tritone interval away. So the root is a tritone interval away. Well, in this case, there's an exception to the rule here. The 2 chord is a minor chord, okay? So A minor is a minor chord, but a tritone away from that is E flat, right? But we're going to make it a dominant 7th chord, so E flat. So this is a very common blues thing to do, actually. So at first, if you look at this outside the context, if you look at them just 1 chord at a time, this is confusing, right? Because you're like E flat 7 sharp 11 to a D flat 7 sharp 9. What's going on there? That just seems really weird. And then it goes down to a G minor 7th chord. But if you realize that we're essentially going into the key of G minor here, and I'll tell you a bigger context to think about it in a second, but if you think about it and understand it as this bluesy tritone substitution 2-5 that goes into G minor, then it makes more sense. Right? So actually, Wayne Shorter's not being confusing here. He's being bluesy with this whole tritone sub of 2 context right here. Okay, so, whoops. Okay, there's that G minor, 11. Then he does something different here. Okay, what does he do there? He goes up a half step to A flat major, or A flat major 7. G minor 11, and and then A flat major 7. Or really, the 9 is in the melody, so you could think of it as just an A major 9. But to simplify it, A flat major 7. So G minor 11, A flat major 7. Okay, so far this is what we got. We got that 2-5 tritone substitution thing going on. Right? E flat 7, D7, G minor 7, A flat major 7. Now here's where things get a little bit interesting here, okay? So far we're key of G minor, right? And here's where things get a little bit interesting. Then he does this thing where he jumps up to a B major, okay? Okay, it goes B major, D7, then D minor 7, G7. What the heck is going on here? Okay, what the heck's going on here? Okay, well, here's what a lot of people think. This is what I've read. I'm not entirely sure if it's 100% true, but this Wayne Shorter could be actually referencing. This is around the same time period, so he could be referencing Coltrane Changes, what John Coltrane did with like tunes like Giant Steps and Countdown, and essentially his Coltrane Changes concept is cycling chords in major and minor thirds, okay? So if you think about it, he goes up from this G minor 11 to this A flat major 7, and then he's moving up the root to B major 7. What is that? That's a minor third up from A flat major 7, okay? So now this is where Wayne Shorter starts a cycle. So if you just at least understand how the cycle works, then it's not so bad here, right? So A flat major 7, up a minor third is B major, just regular B natural, B major 7, and then he goes up another minor third, but he makes it a dominant 7th chord. Okay, it's a D7. Okay, so we got a cycling of minor thirds here. It goes A flat, B, D. These are all a minor third up from each other. So again, we have this. Now here's that A flat major 7 to B major 7 to D7. Now he turns that D7 into D minor 7 to G7. What's D minor 7 to G7? Okay. Now you can think of it as it's a 2-5 approaching a C major 7. Okay, in this case it doesn't resolve. That's okay. There's lots of unresolved 2-5s in jazz harmony. Let's not get too worked up or freaked out about it, okay? So again, let's review this just in case this isn't clicking for you yet. Okay, so far, this bluesy 2-5 into G minor, concert G minor, okay? Then we start the minor third cycle, the Coltrane cycle that he's starting to imply here, okay? Half step up from G minor is A flat. So just a half step up, we have an A flat major 7 to a B major 7 and then a G7. Now we're doing a classic turn that dominant 7 into a minor 7 to make it a 2-5. So instead of D7, now we turn it to a D minor 7, G7. Okay? Right? All right, that's what we have so far. Now we repeat that again, essentially, with just a little bit of a different last several measures there to lead into the bridge. Okay? So here we go again. So now we're repeating this section again. Okay, actually, let me talk about what happened there. There's a different rhythmic thing going on in the melody. Rather than ba-ba-dee-da, it's not. That's the first time, and the second time it's. Right? Okay, back to that G minor 11, back to the A flat major 7, okay? Now here's where things are different. Now we don't do that cycling thirds thing. Now we go a half step down to F sharp, or we're at more appropriately G flat 13, or G flat 7. And then we go to a F13 or F, really it's an F9. So it's a dominant 7th chord. So F sharp or G flat, F to B flat 7. Okay. So we have G flat 7, F, half step down, F7, half step down, B flat 7. Now, do you recognize what's happening there? Remember at the beginning of the song here, we had that bluesy 2-5 and a G minor? Well, now essentially that G flat 7, F7 to B flat is the new 1 chord here. That's the same thing, all right? It's these tritone subs going on here. So you have this bluesy 2-5 into B flat. Okay, so the second time through the A section, again, it's G minor 11, A flat, major 7. Now instead of doing the cycle, it goes down to G flat 7, F7, B flat, because in the bridge, we're trying to get back to the B flat. Now remember, at the beginning of our talk here, I said that FeeFi FoFum is in the key of concert B flat major. It's a B flat 7 blues sort of thing going on here. Okay, so basically we're trying to get back to the key center, which we haven't even really approached yet. We haven't gotten to the 1 chord yet in the song. So the 1 chord really comes out in the bridge rather than the A sections. That's interesting, right? But this isn't completely uncommon, right? This happens the opposite in Autumn Leaves, where we start in the relative major and then go to the parent minor. Well, in this case, we're starting in the parent minor. The relative minor. What is the relative minor to B flat major? It's G minor. G minor is the relative minor to B flat major. Now, if you're not sure how I came up with that, basically if you just go through a major scale and you go to the 6th tone, okay, the 6th chord tone or the 6th scale tone, that's going to be the relative minor, right? So what's the 6th scale tone of B flat? Well, B flat's there, G is the 6th scale tone. And we know by harmonizing a major scale that it's a G minor chord. That's why we call this the relative minor, right? So essentially, this song is the relative minor and the relative major. See what I did there? I just made this song really simple. Now, we know it's not completely simple, right? There's other things going on. But if we want to boil down to the basics of what FeeFi FoFum is all about, it's all about the relative minor and the parent major. The relative minor is G minor, the key of G minor. The parent major is B flat major, right? And I personally, rather than thinking about, like, for example, we could think about the first chords of the song, like we have the E flat 7. We could think of that as the 4 dominant, right? Because to the parent major, it's the 4 dominant. But I don't think that's the best way to think about it, because we're really thinking about this as a 2-5 into G minor, the relative minor. Okay, I know this is really confusing. For those of you who really understand harmony, you're probably tracking with me. If not, just maybe pause this, take a little time to simmer on this, maybe try playing it through your instrument a little bit, try to grasp some of these concepts, okay? But I do want to move on, all right? But I just want to make the big point here that when we're dealing with these difficult songs, we need to do our best to try to boil down what they're all about, right? Don't get so hung up on, oh, well, what's he doing going to the A flat major, to the B major, to the D7? Like, that's weird. That has nothing to do with anything. Well, technically, it really does. He's just doing a little cycling effort going through, but he's really still focused on the relative minor. So again, I just made this song a lot simpler, right? Just by going, we start in the relative minor, and in the bridge, we go to the parent major, which is B flat, all right? So now we're at the bridge, and the bridge sounds like this. So it starts on an E flat 7. So it starts on the 4 chord. And then it goes to the B7, the 1 chord. So da 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 da. Okay, what do we got here? Da 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 da. Now we have something different here. B flat minor 7, E flat 7, half step down, A minor 7, D7, and then we go back into the last A section, okay? But quickly, let's talk about that bridge. We essentially have a blues. Now, if you know the blues, which that's really important, if you don't know how to play the blues, go figure that out, because that's an important thing to know. But the blues has a lot to do with a 1 dominant 7th chord and the 4/7 chord. So in this case, we're starting on the 4 chord, like as if we're like, we're on the 4 chord in the blues, which is E flat 7. And it goes, and then resolves to the B flat 7. And then it does it again. And then it changes things up here. Okay, then it goes E flat 7, da 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 da. And now we need to change things up around. We need to get things back to where we need to go to, back to the A section, right? So then it goes B flat minor 7, E7, okay, and then A minor 7, D7. What is that right there? So B flat minor 7, we're turning the 1 dominant 7th chord into a minor 7th chord. So now it goes to a E flat 7. I wouldn't think of this as the 1 to the 4 anymore. Now it's a 2/5, as if it's going to the key of A flat, right? Because a B flat minor 7 and an E flat 7, that's the 2/5 going to an A flat major. But that's not what's happening here. It goes B flat minor 7, E flat 7, A minor 7, D7. Okay, that's what we call a chromatic 2/5. Very common. That happens all the time. You do a 2/5 insinuating one key, but then you cycle down one more, okay, to a half step down, another 2/5. Now, what is that 2/5? A minor 7 to D7. What is that? That's a 2/5 going to G major, right? Because it's just a regular minor 7th chord. It's not a minor 7 flat 5. Okay. Now that's weird, right? Because G major, that's nothing to do with, the key of concert B flat major. Well, just remember that even though it's insinuating a major 2/5, oftentimes, this happens in a lot of other songs, actually. The Shadow of Your Smile is one I'm thinking of, where it's sort of deceptive at first. It's a major 2/5, but then it ends up going to the 1, the minor 1, right? So, yeah, maybe it's not a minor 7 flat 5 to an altered dominant 5, right? It's not that, which is typical of minor harmony. It's kind of deceptive. It's a minor 2 chord, 5 chord, but then it resolves to the 1. So if we think of it about it that way, really Wayne Shorter is not doing anything too weird. He's doing a chromatic 2/5, B flat minor 7 to E flat 7 to A minor 7 to D7, and he's anticipating going back to a G minor, which is the relative minor, which is where the A section starts. I know this is a lot, and especially for audio, right? This is a lot to, and that's why looking at the chord chart could be helpful if you're getting a little lost. But instead of going to the minor 1 chord, he starts the A section over again, which again is just a glorified tritone substitution 2/5 going into G minor. So the last bit of the B section, B flat minor 7, E flat 7, A minor 7, D7. Okay? So it all makes sense, actually, if you think about it. He's still aiming towards the relative minor, but then we start this again. Okay, same thing as the first section of the first day. Now we're just on the last day out. Okay, now he's going to repeat it again, but he's closing off the song now. So this is what he's going to do. Check it out. All right, what's going on here? So this is familiar. Okay, that's that E flat 7 sharp 11. Okay, that's the D7. So as if we're going to that G minor 7 again, right? The relative minor, but we don't. We go. What is that? That's a D flat major 7th chord. A D flat major 7th chord. What's going on here, right? So we have E flat 7, D7, D flat major 7. Man, that sounds good, right? And then he goes to a C7. Okay, what's going on here? So, okay, again, one more time. Notice what's happening chromatically here. This is really important, okay? Because this is easy to get hung up on this. Like, what is he doing? I'm freaking out. Okay, don't worry about it. Like, just look at what the bass movement is doing. This is a great compositional thing to do. He's going E flat 7, down a half step to D7, down a half step to D flat major 7, down a half step to C7, and guess how he ends out the song? Down a half step to B major 7, except for actually he's playing a B major 7 sharp 11, right? So he gets that Lydian sound in there. Right? So that's how he's ending the song. Now that might seem weird too, because right, remember I said we're in the key of B flat, but we're ending on a B major. I mean that's weird, right? And right, I can understand why. Well, that doesn't really make sense. So why are we doing that? On the other hand, it is not absurd to actually sometimes resolve a song on a major 7th chord, a half step up from the 1 chord. That's not unheard of. That happens, and sometimes people just do it for the fun of it and just kind of leave it there like that. So first of all, that's not completely foreign to what composers have done in the past, but more importantly, he's resolving all of it chromatically. So to the ear, it sounds good. E flat 7, D7, D flat major 7, C7, B flat major 7. So he's mixing in these dominant 7th chords and major 7th chords moving down chromatically. So when you get to that part and you're just like, I don't know how to remember that, just think, oh, instead of going to the G minor after that tritone 2-5, we're just descending chromatically until we resolve to that B major 7 sharp 11. Right? Does that make sense? Oh, one more thing to say about that too. The B major 7, that's also not foreign to this song so far. Remember? We did the whole minor thirds Coltrane thing, the A flat major 7, B major, there it is. D7, D minor 7, G7 thing, right? So we've touched B major 7 before right now, right? So that's FeeFi FoFum, okay? So let's boil this down, because ultimately this episode isn't just about learning how to play FeeFi FoFum. It's more about how to memorize, how to learn these difficult songs. So let's do 3 lessons. 3 lessons I want you to take from this show, from what I talked about on FeeFi FoFum. It doesn't matter if you didn't completely get everything that I was talking about today. That's okay. But I want you to pull out these 3 lessons. So lesson number 1 is boil things down. Make it simple. Boil things down, make it simple. So look at the entire context of the song, because if you just looked at everything individually by chords, it gets very confusing. It's hard to understand what Wayne Shorter is going for. But if we boil things down to its most simplest terms, which in this case, I looked at the entire harmony, I looked at all the form, and I said to myself, oh, Wayne Shorter is in the key of B flat, but he's starting with the relative minor. And essentially, he is mostly aiming, his target is the relative minor, which is G minor, and B flat major, which is the parent major, okay? So number 1 is boil things down to its simplest terms. Doesn't matter about all the little details in there. Just boil it down into its simplicity, okay? And now, the second tip here for when we're trying to learn difficult songs is work on it section by section. If you're having a hard time understanding it, just work it section by section. I think too often what we try to do is bite off more we can chew with these songs, right? We try to learn the whole thing all at once, or we just keep going through it and we're not getting it, and we're like, what's happening here? Take 4 bars and really chew on it and try to figure out what's happening, right? Like at the beginning, that's what we did. It's like, first you have this E flat 7 sharp 11. Well, first of all, sharp 11 is just weird to start on, but that's in the melody, right? He has this beautiful melody that has that sharp 11 in there. And then half step down, D7 sharp 9, right? What's going on? That's weird. And then to a G minor 7. But if you just slow down and you look at it, you're like, oh, he's just doing a bluesy thing into G minor. That's not so bad, right? So break it down in smaller pieces, because if you bite off more than you can chew on it, you're going to get a little overwhelmed. But if you just break it down, okay, that's all he was doing there. Okay, that's not so bad. Now, what's the next part that he's doing here? Oh, well, he's going up a half step to A flat major 7, okay, to B major 7, to D7. That's crazy. What is he doing? Well, all he's doing is he's doing a cycling in minor thirds. Well, that's actually not that hard to memorize if you think about it. If you understand intervals, then it's like, oh, okay, this section is just ascending minor thirds. He's doing a little cycling thing. That's not so bad, right? So once you do that, it starts to become easier to digest, okay? Now, my third tip for you, the final tip for learning these difficult songs, is to understand that this isn't a math equation, okay? So a lot of us, we want to understand completely what was Wayne Shorter thinking. How does 2 + 2 = 4 here? How, what's the math behind it? Because is everything working out? Does everything have a diatonic purpose? Does everything make 100% sense? Like, it must work somehow, right? There must be something here. And the truth is about composing is that you can make any chord work with any chord if you just resolve it properly, right? That's how musicians are able to play quote unquote outside of the chord changes. It's not that they stay out there, because then it just sounds like bad notes, like wrong notes. It doesn't sound good to the ear. But they always resolve it. So in the case of that last A section with FeeFi FoFum, right? He's going E flat 7, D7, D flat major 7, C7, and then ending on a B major 7. And you might say, well, I'm sorry, but B major 7 has nothing to do with B flat major, which you said is the parent major. And guess what? That's okay. Because that's what makes this composition interesting, is it goes different places. It doesn't always have to line up with some diatonic conclusion, right? That's what makes it interesting. In fact, the genius of Wayne Shorter and many other composers is that they're able to tie these ideas together to make something beautiful and melodic. And there's always some sort of function underneath that's lying underneath, some logic there. Right? For example, remember that bluesy 2/5 thing at the beginning? E flat 7, D7, G minor 7. But then how do we get into the bridge? He did this G flat 7, F7, B flat 7. He did the same exact technique to get into the parent major as he did to the relative minor. Isn't that awesome? Right? I mean, so, but again, if we just think of like G flat 7 as a chord by itself, it's like, well, that doesn't make any sense. Yeah, but if you understand it in the context of that he's resolving to the parent major, it makes sense. So it doesn't always have to make sense though, right? It's okay if it's going like, what is the D flat major doing in there? It doesn't matter. It's going chromatically downwards to resolve to the B major. And it's okay that D flat major has nothing to do with B flat major. Does that make sense? I know this is a lot of crazy talk, and if you're more of a beginner and you don't have as much experience using this lingo, I can understand you might feel a little bit confused. But again, just boil it down to those three things. Okay. Tip number 1 is boil it down to its most simple form that you can possibly make it. Tip number 2 is break it down into small sections. Don't try to bite off more you can chew. And tip number 3 is be open and understanding that not everything has to make mathematical sense. Okay? Those are my tips for learning difficult songs. And I think if you go through it like this way, you're going to find that all these really difficult harmonic jazz compositions aren't really as bad as they seem. All right, that's all for today's show. Thanks so much for listening. I really do appreciate it. I don't take for granted. I hope that you learned something today, either about FeeFi FoFum or just in general learning these difficult songs and how to approach them. And hey, the Jazz Standards Playbook, that's a book that I really believe in. I've seen how it's affected a lot of musicians, and I get emails from a lot of the people that have that book and that companion course, especially the people in the companion course, getting huge value out of it. So if you want to really dive into jazz standards, it's a study of 10 jazz standards that are really important, then go to thejazzstandardsplaybook.com and sign up to get that. It's a very valuable resource, and just hope that you dive into that material. All right. Last but not least, if you got value out of today's show and you haven't done this before, you've been listening for a while and you love the show, then rate and review it on iTunes or your favorite podcast listening service. And we really greatly appreciate that. That really helps out the show. Free way to give back. Takes about a minute of your time or so. And I do read every single one of those reviews, and it makes my day. So I do appreciate that in advance. All right, that's all for today's show. We're going to be coming out with another one next week. I'll see you back then.
Thanks for listening to the LJS podcast, brought to you by LearnJazzStandards.com. Subscribe to the series on iTunes, and don't forget to join our jazz community at LearnJazzStandards.com/newsletter.